Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today's video, I'm going to be talking about my labor and delivery story of my second baby. She was born on December 14th, 2019, and I just wanted to go ahead and record this before I start to forget too much. So that I have it to look back on. I had an induced labor with absolutely no pain medication. So I just want to share my story. As I was preparing for my induction, I was searching all over the internet for stories of people who had an induced labor and did not have an epidural, because I knew that was something that I did not want. And I had kind of a hard time finding other people's stories. I did find a few, which was helpful and awesome, and it gave me encouragement. But I just wanted to share mine just to put it out there. I think that sharing your birth experience is really an awesome thing, and I think it's helpful to other moms, and I just think it's really great to look back on. I think that no matter what kind of labor you choose, you should just stand behind those decisions, be proud of them, and don't let anybody make you feel bad for them. Just a disclaimer, you guys, this video is going to be a little bit TMI. We are talking about labor and delivery, so if you're not interested in all the gory details, this is probably not the video for you. I'm going to get into all the details, so if that bothers you, then go ahead and click out and let's get into it. At my 38-week appointment, that was when we scheduled my induction for the 14th. My due date was December 13th. So after talking about it, my doctor asked if I wanted to be induced, what my thoughts were, and I really wanted to go into labor spontaneously. I was scared of having Pitocin. I'd always heard that induced labors were so much harder than natural labors, and the first time around, I had a pretty quick and easy labor with my son. All in all, it was about 5 hours, so pretty good for a first baby, and I did not have an epidural with him either. I did have IV pain medication. I had Dilaudid, and I knew that I did not want an epidural again this time, so I was scared of an induction, but I said if I go past my due date, then at that point I would be okay with it, just because I know that once you go over term, there can be some increased risk of things like stillbirth. You're obviously at risk to have a larger baby the further you go. I had been having high blood pressure, so all in all, it was just the best choice for me and my baby to go ahead with scheduling the induction. So we went ahead with the induction. I did not go into labor on my own beforehand, although I tried everything. There's a video that everybody on my pregnancy app was recommending here on YouTube that's called Activate Labor or something along those lines. I think if you search Activating Labor, Activate Labor, it'll bring it up. But it's this workout that supposedly you can do, and it'll start you into labor. And I started doing that at 37 or 38 weeks. I did it like every day. And no, it did not start labor for me. So everybody who says, oh yeah, it'll start labor, it didn't work for me. It's not that it's a bad video. I think doing squats, doing exercises, all that is good, because hopefully it will make it easier once you do go into labor. The better shape you're in, the easier labor you will probably have. So it's not a bad thing, but for me, it didn't work to induce my labor naturally. I didn't try any castor oil or anything like that. I just wasn't comfortable doing that. I ate spicy food. I did kind of the more natural things. I was just kind of letting my body and my baby do its own thing. And if I was gonna go into labor, great. If not, I was fine to just go ahead with the induction at the hospital. Obviously, my due date came and went on the 13th. My baby didn't come, so I went in on the 14th to be induced. We got to the hospital around 9:30 in the morning. We checked in, did all the paperwork, everything you have to do, and then we had to sit in the waiting room for a little bit. My doctor came and talked to us and kind of asked what I was thinking as far as what I wanted. We had talked in the office at my 39-week appointment kind of about what my plan was, what I wanted to use for pain medication, all of that, which, as I said before, I did not want an epidural. Reason being, I really liked with my first labor that I was able to get up and walk around right away. I didn't want a catheter because that's something that makes me nervous. And I just didn't really like the idea of a needle going into my spine. I am not a huge fan of needles, and honestly, with my first labor, my pain was managed pretty well, and I felt like it was tolerable, especially once I got to the pushing phase. So I was okay with not having an epidural, and I was pretty set on that if I could. So that's what I told my doctor, and he asked kind of what I was thinking as far as the induction method. Something we had talked about in the office was that we could start with just breaking my water, we could just start with Pitocin, or we could start with doing both, so breaking my water and starting on a small amount of Pitocin. And I just wanted to have my water broken and kind of go from there. I really wanted to avoid the Pitocin if I could, because I heard from everyone that Pitocin makes your contractions so much harder, and that was something I was really scared of, really nervous about, just because I thought that if I had super strong contractions, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'll remember from my first baby that the contractions, especially right before I had him, were the worst part. They were so painful, like an 11 out of 10 on the pain scale. And so I was scared of having them one on top of another and much more intense if I chose the Pitocin. And I just felt like breaking my water was kind of a more natural way to go as far as an induction. So they took me back to a room. I had to talk with the nurse, give them all my medical history. I had to get changed. They gave me an IV. They didn't hook me up to anything, but they just had like the IV access available, and they just taped it off so that they could hook up whatever was needed, fluids or Pitocin or whatever. And then by the time my doctor came back to actually get the process started and break my water, it was about 11 or 11:30 in the morning. He came in, did a cervical exam, all of that, said I was about 2.5 centimeters dilated, which is the same as I had been for the past like 4 weeks. At my 35-week OB appointment was the first time I got a cervical check, and I was 1 to 1.5 centimeters. And then the next time I was 2 to 2.5. And I stayed at that for 37, 38, and 39 weeks. So after that, I hadn't really progressed at all. So he broke my water at about 11:30 in the morning, which that was super painful. They use like a little crochet hook thing, and they have to pull the amniotic sac to break your water. And it took a few minutes. I don't know exactly how long, but it was uncomfortable. I did have quite a bit of bleeding after, and they weren't sure if my water actually broke, because I guess my baby's head was so low in my pelvis that she was kind of like sitting there like a plug. So there wasn't like a big gush of water or anything. Afterwards, my doctor was like, okay, let's have you get up and walk around for about an hour. And then if your water hasn't broken, I'll come back and try again, because they just weren't sure because of where baby's head was. Since I didn't have that gush, they were like, it's maybe broken, it's maybe not. But I got up to go to the bathroom, and then I did experience a big gush. Like, I stood up and it was just all over the floor. There was a bunch of blood and some other fluids. So I told the nurse, and she was like, okay, it sounds like your water did break, so that's good. They gave me one of those huge pads and the mesh underwear that they give you for when you're postpartum to put on, and then I was able to walk around in the halls. So we walked around the labor and delivery unit, just walking laps for about an hour, and then they wanted me to go back to the room so that I could be put on the monitor. They just had me do intermittent monitoring. So I would go walk, and then I would come back and be on the monitor for about half an hour, and then they'd let me go walk or bounce on the birthing ball again, just to kind of try to get things going naturally. My water was broken and I didn't want the Pitocin. They're like, you got to try to do everything you can to kick labor into gear. So lots of walking, lots of moving your hips, just trying to get baby engaged, trying to get contractions going. We went back to the room and they monitored. They said my daughter was doing really well. I was having a few little contractions here and there. I think they said they were between 7 and 10 minutes apart, but I wasn't even feeling them. I guess maybe there was like a little bit of tightening, but honestly, I couldn't tell whether it was her moving or whether it was contractions, because she was always a very active baby in the womb. She moved all the time, which was an awesome feeling, but it was hard for me to tell when the contractions were happening because they weren't painful, which was cool. That's great. Obviously, you don't want to be in severe pain. So they monitored for a little bit, and then they said, let's have you go walk again for about another half an hour, and then we'll just kind of see how things are going, because obviously if your contractions aren't super consistent, they're pretty far apart, they're not painful, it's not like a real active labor stage yet. So I went and walked around again, and then I came back and the nurse checked me again. I think at this point it was around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and she said I was about 3.5 to 4 centimeters dilated, which was good because when I had went in, I was at 2.5. So things were moving forward. That's what they were looking for, is that cervical change. When you're having cervical change, it means that you're having real contractions and that you're in labor. That was a good sign. So my doctor said that it was okay to still wait on the Pitocin. That was great. I was very excited about that because, like I said, I really wanted to avoid that. At that point, after she checked me, I did ask for a birthing ball. So she went and brought me one, and then I sat in the room and bounced on that for like half an hour or an hour while we watched TV. I bounced on the labor ball for a while, and then she came in, put the monitors back on for a little bit, and I was just going on and off the monitors. Like I said, about every 30 minutes they'd check, and then they'd let me be off of them for a little bit, and then they'd check again just to make sure that my baby was doing okay, that her heartbeat was good, and to monitor the contractions, all of that. Contractions weren't really picking up that much. I would have them here or there, but they weren't really getting consistent. They weren't really getting painful, and I started feeling kind of discouraged. My labor nurse that I had, I felt like she was really kind of pushing me to take the Pitocin. She came in and was like, I don't understand why you want it. Are you scared of side effects? Why are you having reservations? And I just said, I don't want an epidural, and if I can do it on my own without the Pitocin, I'd prefer to, because I just don't want to have really strong contractions right on top of each other. My body's trying to go into labor. I just want to give it time to do that. And so I think the nurse was kind of getting a little bit upset with me, and I was getting discouraged. Honestly, like, she got me to the point of tears because I felt so frustrated. I don't mean to talk bad about my nurse. She was a great lady. She helped me through my labor, and I totally appreciate everything she did for me. But in that moment, when you're in the hospital and you're trying to have your baby and you already have, hormones at the yin yang, you're just feeling like somebody's pressuring you into something you don't want. It's just like, it's really hard when you're in that situation. Luckily, my doctor was a huge advocate for me. My nurse said that she talked to my doctor, and he said, since I was having cervical change, that it was okay to hold off on the Pitocin for now, and that, since I didn't want it, I didn't need to have it at this time. There was no need for it. So that was really great. I appreciate my doctor so much. He was just amazing, and I'm so thankful that I had him advocating for me through the whole process. So after bouncing on the ball, I started kind of feeling a little bit of tightening, and I thought maybe that was contractions getting going, which was awesome. The nurse said I could go walk around again, so we went and did that, and while I was walking, I started getting what felt like period cramps. This was around 5:30, and it was enough where I would have to slow down and kind of stop while I would have it, but then I could start walking again. It wasn't super painful. I would say it was uncomfortable. So maybe like a 3 or 4 out of 10 on the pain scale. And I remember telling my husband, I feel like this is like what I had in early labor with our last baby, but they were coming and going, and like I said, it wasn't super painful. So I was just like, okay, maybe I'm starting to kick things into gear. This is good. After walking for about another half an hour, we went back to the room. She put me back on the monitors, and she said, okay, we're going to check your cervix again. And I think this was around 6:30 that they checked my cervix again. And she said, okay, you're about 4.5 to 5. So a little bit of change from last time that we came in. And I was excited about that. I was like, okay, good. They put me on the monitors for a little bit longer. She said, let's have you sit here, and I just want to check, because she said that my baby's heart rate had gone up a little bit, and so they wanted to keep an eye on that. So I said, well, while you're monitoring, is it okay if I sit on the birthing ball again? And she said, yeah, that's fine. We can monitor while you're on the ball. So I sat there, bounced on the ball, they monitored, and then a little bit after that, I'm not sure at this point what time it was, I was having contractions that were about 4 to 5 minutes apart. But then there would be a longer break and then a shorter break, and they were kind of all over the map. And the nurse said she thought that my baby was sunny side up, and that's why my contractions were inconsistent, which my contractions were very inconsistent with my first labor too. So it made me wonder if my son had been in that position too, or if I just have inconsistent contractions, because they'd be like, 10 minutes, and then I'd have one 2 minutes apart, and then I'd have one 5 minutes, and then it'd be like 3 minutes. And so they were just all over, which I just think is interesting. That's how it's been every time for me so far. Well, the 2 times that I've been in labor so far. So the nurse said, she might be in the wrong position. We may have to try to turn her, but go ahead and walk around again. I told my husband, I was like, all right, I just got to go to the bathroom, and then we can go and walk. So I went in the bathroom, did that, and then I started having much more severe pain. I came out of the bathroom to go walk around, and I went to get my robe on so we could go back out in the hall, because obviously I needed to cover up. I was in a hospital gown, and I just started getting way more severe pain. I was like, okay. I told my husband, I don't think I can do this. I need to walk in the room. I don't want to go back out in the hall. So I just kind of did slow laps around our hospital room. It was a fairly big room, so I kind of do like a big circle. So I walked in there, and the pain was getting worse and worse. It was like bad enough at this point that I couldn't talk through the contractions. I was like leaning on the counter. I started getting a little bit nauseous. Luckily this time I didn't throw up. I did throw up during labor with my son, so thank goodness I didn't have that again. But it was like they started getting more intense. At this point it was probably like a 7 out of 10. And then all of a sudden it hit me like a train, and I was like brought to my knees. I was leaning over the hospital bed, just like, I don't think I can do this. I told my husband, I was like almost in tears. I was just like, I can't do it. Then when the contraction would stop, I was like, okay, a little breather. But then it was just like horrendous. And this was like just shortly before 8 o'clock. So I tell my husband, I was like, I'm in so much pain, and I feel like I need to go to the bathroom. I feel like I need to go number 2. And he's like, I'm going to go get the nurse. And he had said he was going to get the nurse like a whole bunch of times when I was like leaning over the bed in pain, when I said I couldn't do it. He's like, let me go see if they can get you something. And I kept telling him, no, because they had just checked me not that long ago, and I was only 4.5 to 5 centimeters. And I was like, I don't want the nurse to come back in and be like, you're still 5 centimeters, honey, like settle down. So I was like, no, don't go get her. Like, it'll be fine. Like, I think it'll still be a while, because I had only been in labor for a really short amount of time. And I was like, I'm just gonna go in the bathroom. I feel like I need to go number 2. So I went in the bathroom, and my husband's like, okay, I'm just gonna go ask for some ice, because I wanted ice water. So I was like, okay. So I go in the bathroom, and I'm in there on the toilet, like in severe pain, having these contractions. I'm like leaned over, like shaking, holding onto the bars, like just like, it was horrible. And the nurse comes into the bathroom and is like, okay, we got to get you up off the toilet, honey. We got to get you up, get you back in the bed. And I'm like, what? Like, my husband had went and got the nurse and had her come into the bathroom while I'm sitting there, drop trow on the toilet. So I'm like, great, I'm about as exposed as I can be. Obviously you're exposed in childbirth, so I know that sounds silly, but just like, nobody wants somebody coming in when you're sitting on the toilet. Like, that's about the most embarrassing situation you can be in. But so she gets me up. I like stumble back to the hospital bed, and some of this is kind of a blur because it all went so fast. Walks me back to the hospital bed. They get me in the bed, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna get the doctor and everything. And like legit 5 people come running into the room. There's like a whole bunch of nurses, my doctor and another doctor, and just like everybody's like scattering around. It's like grabbing equipment, grabbing the baby warmer thing, pulling the lights down out of the ceiling, just like all kinds of craziness. And I'm like laying there in the bed like, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. Like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I need something. Now, I said, guys, I didn't plan on an epidural, which I didn't, but I thought I was gonna get IV pain meds again like I did with my son. And my husband was like, can we get her something for pain? And the nurse was like, no, honey, this baby's coming now. Like, we don't have time for that. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'm having a natural labor. Like, I pretty much went from not very painful contractions to unbearable, and now they're like, yep, you're gonna push, like you're fully dilated, baby's head's right there. Two nurses came over and were like by my sides, and my husband's holding one leg and the nurse is holding the other leg, and they're like, all right, we're gonna push. And there's just like so many people talking, so many people saying stuff. They're like, push, push, push. I'm just like sitting there with my eyes closed, trying to push. And I think I did, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 pushes. I'm not really sure how long I was pushing for, maybe like 10-15 minutes. I really don't know. Like at that point I had absolutely no concept of time. It was just like a complete whirlwind. I was like shaking from adrenaline and from pain. Something that happened this time that I don't remember with my son is, one, I felt like the extreme ring of fire, which I felt it a little bit with him. I did go back and watch my video and I said I did, which I don't really remember that. But this time it was like extreme. Like it felt like she was stuck in there and completely ripping me open. Sorry, I know that's really TMI and gruesome sounding, but yeah. And then when she came out, it just like felt like she shot out. Like it was like, I could just feel it go from like that intense ring of fire, like, oh my gosh, I'm being ripped apart, to like, whoop. So yeah, she was out. She immediately started crying. They put her up on my chest. My husband cut the cord. It was just like so alert. Her eyes were wide open and she was just looking around everywhere. And it was just like the coolest thing ever. Although it was like a super painful delivery, the pushing was way more painful than I remember with my son. With my son, contractions were super painful, but then I got a little bit of relief from pushing. But with her, pushing was super painful. But once she was there, it was like the pain was pretty much completely gone. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I just had an unmedicated delivery. Like I felt so empowered and it was really cool. Then obviously after that, they took the baby, they weighed her. She was 6 pounds, 10 ounces and 20.5 inches long. So she was on the smaller side. And my doctor was pushing on my belly. I had to push one more time and then the placenta shot out, which that shot out too. I asked to see it, of course, because I'm always interested in all the medical stuff. So my doctor showed it to me, explained it. I was able to look at it, which was really cool. And then the nurses kind of pushed on my belly a little bit more, and that was pretty much the whole labor process. At the hospital where I delivered, they then move you to the postpartum unit, so you switch rooms. You go from the labor and delivery room to the postpartum unit. So after an hour, they did move me there. I was able to get up and walk around and use the restroom. As soon as I had her, they did finally start me on Pitocin, I should say. And the reason for that is just to try to limit the risk of any postpartum hemorrhaging. I did have the Pitocin drip for, I think it was like 4 hours after she was born. She was born at 8:28 p.m. So I just say tips for if you want to have an unmedicated induction. First off, just go into it with a positive mindset. Go into it thinking like, I don't need an epidural, I can do this. My second tip would be talk to your doctor about the induction process, what they're gonna be doing, what your options are, and where you can choose. Like, do they allow you to choose to just have your water broken? Do they allow you to just start with Pitocin only? Like, what are the options for you at your hospital? And just make sure that you have somebody who is advocating for you. I cannot stress enough how important that is. I am so thankful to my OB. He is just like the most amazing person ever. Really advocated for what I wanted. And even when I felt like the nurse was pressuring me, he was like, you know, she doesn't want the Pitocin, so we can hold off. Her body's going into labor on its own. Like, he was just awesome and he's the best. So definitely find somebody who's in your corner, who you trust, and who is going to advocate for you and what you want. Obviously, the most important thing is a healthy baby. So if they had told me I needed Pitocin, if there had been any risk to my daughter, obviously I would have taken it. But in a lower risk situation, I think it's really important to have a doctor or a healthcare provider who's really going to advocate for what you want and help you try to have the positive birth experience that you want to have. So it was a scary experience, I'm not gonna lie, but overall it was a really positive experience. If I had another baby in the future, would I go unmedicated again? I'm not sure. I might opt for the IV pain medication again. but maybe not. My recovery this time with having nothing was amazing. It was 10 times better. I didn't tear, I didn't have stitches, nothing. I really didn't have any pain down there after like the first 24 hours. They gave me ice for the first 24 hours, and then after that I didn't need ice, I didn't need dermaplast, I didn't need witch hazel. Like, I felt so good physically. My belly went down faster. Like, I don't know if it was just that it was a second pregnancy, or if it was that I had a faster labor or an unmedicated labor or what, but my recovery was a million times better, and I just felt so empowered. So honestly, I don't know what I'd do in the future, because both my birth experiences were pretty good. They were a little bit different, but they were both good. So I don't know. Anyway, this video is super long. I'm sorry for that, but if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. Please give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and please hit the subscribe button and join me for future videos on my channel. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I will see you guys in my next video.